Shaquille O'Neal was driving home late at night and suddenly noticed a black girl in the park with two babies in her arms. She was barefoot and almost unconscious. What happened next, no one could have predicted. Subscribe if you don't want to miss out stories like this. The rain was heavy that night. It didn't just fall, it poured, washing the streets clean of color and warmth. The city lights blurred behind the windshield like tears smudged across a window pane. It was close to midnight and most of the world had already gone to sleep. Shaquille O'Neal, 7'1", former basketball legend, now a businessman and gentle giant of the people, sat behind the wheel of his matte black SUV. The interior was quiet, no music, just the soft hum of the engine and the distant sound of thunder rolling through the clouds. He had just left a charity dinner, smiled for pictures, signed autographs, spoke kindly to donors, and shook hands with people who believed in change. But right now, the smile had faded from his face. His eyes were tired, reflecting the soft blue glow of the GPS. His large hands gripped the wheel loosely. Rain slapped the hood like impatient fingers. He was driving through a part of town he usually didn't visit at this hour, an older part of the city where buildings wore graffiti like scars and benches sagged under years of weather. He was almost home, almost, until he saw her. A flicker. Just a second. A shadow on the side of the road. He blinked. Then he saw her again. She was standing beside an old, rusted bus bench, barely under the cover of its broken metal roof. A thin, black girl, couldn't have been older than 10, drenched from head to toe. She wasn't wearing shoes. Her feet were bare on the soaked concrete. She held something in her arms. No, two things. Babies. She was holding two babies. Shaq slowed the car. His heart beat a little faster. He squinted through the rain. The girl didn't move. She just stood there, still as a statue, like the storm didn't bother her anymore. Her head hung low. Her arms cradled the babies tightly against her chest, as if afraid the wind might take them. Her hair was stuck to her face, soaked and tangled, and her thin dress clung to her small frame like wet tissue. Shaq's hand moved to the hazard lights. He pulled the SUV to the curb. He sat there for a moment, watching her. Something in her posture wasn't right. It wasn't just sadness. It was deeper. It was brokenness. Shaq opened the door. Rain hit his broad shoulders instantly. He walked slowly toward her, careful not to startle her. "Hey," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "You okay?" The girl didn't look up. He stepped closer. "I'm not going to hurt you," he added, his voice soft. "It's cold. You're barefoot. You shouldn't be out here." The girl raised her head a little. Her eyes met his. They were wide, dark, and full of something ancient. Pain too old for a child's face. Her lips were blue. Her cheeks were streaked with rain and maybe tears. One of the babies made a weak, scratchy cry. Shaq's heart twisted in his chest. The girl whispered, but her voice broke. She took a step back. Her knees wobbled. "Whoa," Shaq said quickly, moving forward and reaching out just as she collapsed. He caught her just in time, his massive arms wrapping around her and the babies. She was light, too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. The babies barely stirred. Shaq crouched, holding all three of them close, shielding them from the rain with his body. "It's okay," he said quietly. I got you, baby girl. You're safe now." Back inside the SUV, the heater blasted warm air. Shaq carefully placed the girl on the back seat, laying her gently on a pile of dry towels he kept in the trunk for charity work. The babies were wrapped in his thick jacket, both of them shivering but breathing. He turned the heat up higher. The girl opened her eyes slowly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Where am I?" "In my car," Shaq said, glancing at her in the mirror. "Name's Shaquille. You might have heard of me." She blinked, confused. Shaq smiled a little. It's all right if you haven't. What's your name? She hesitated. Nia. Pretty name. She looked at the babies, then at him. Don't take them. I won't, he said gently. They yours? She nodded slowly. My sisters. Shaq's throat tightened. He kept his voice steady. You their big sister, huh? How old are you? 9. He shook his head in disbelief. 9 years old, barefoot in the rain, carrying 2 babies. That's some kind of strength. She looked away, her lips trembling. Where were you going? He asked softly. Nia didn't answer. Okay, he said. No pressure. Let's just get you warm and safe first. He picked up his phone and called a friend at the children's hospital. I'm bringing in 3 kids, he said firmly. No ID. No guardian. Just trust me. They trusted him. Of course they did. At the hospital, nurses rushed out with blankets and warm drinks. Nia panicked when they tried to take the babies. No, she cried, eyes wild. Shaq stepped in, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. His eyes met hers. They're gonna help them, he said. But I'll stay. I promise I'll stay right here. Her lip quivered. She nodded slowly. Shaq kept his word. He sat in the hallway outside the ER for 2 hours, soaking wet in his suit, waiting. When the doctor came out, she had a tired smile. They'll be okay, she said. Dehydrated, cold, hungry. But they'll make it, Shaq nodded. And the girl? The doctor's face fell a little. She's been through a lot. She's strong, but she's exhausted. Mentally, physically. Might need trauma counseling. We'll keep her here overnight. Shaq looked through the glass. Nia was asleep, curled up beside her sisters, one hand resting gently on the baby's tiny back. He didn't know her story yet, but he would. Whatever pain she'd walked through, whatever storm had brought her to that corner in the rain, it wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Before the rain, before the pain, before the barefoot night and the storm's cold hands, there was warmth. There was a home. And in that home there was a smell. Nutmeg and lavender. Nia remembered it even now. Curled up in a hospital bed with a blanket wrapped around her. Her eyelids fluttered, her breath steady. She was dreaming, not of rain or fear or Douglas yelling, but of her mother. Her name was Teresa Green, and she was a nurse. A tall, graceful woman with smooth brown skin and full lips that always seemed on the edge of a smile. Her eyes were big and kind, like 2 soft pillows you could fall into. She wore scrubs most days, her long black hair tied up in a bun. But at home, on her days off, she always wore long cotton skirts and fuzzy socks, and she liked to dance while cooking. Their house had small windows and peeling paint, but inside it felt like a hug. On Sundays, Teresa baked. Banana bread, apple pie, cinnamon cookies, whatever her heart felt like. And every time she baked, she lit a lavender candle. You see, Nia, her mama once said, kneading dough with her hands covered in flour. Lavender calms the nerves. And nutmeg? That's for the soul. Nia, only 7 then, sat at the kitchen table, with a pencil in her hand, drawing her mama as she baked. So that's why it smells so nice in here? Her mama smiled, showing her dimples. Exactly. A calm nerve and a warm soul. That's how we survive the world, baby. Nia opened her eyes slowly in the hospital bed. For a moment, she expected to see the lavender candle on the nightstand, the soft flicker dancing in the corner. But there was only white walls and the beeping of machines. A nurse walked in, short, friendly, middle-aged white lady with bright green glasses and a soft voice. Good morning, sweetheart, she said with a smile. You're awake. Nia blinked. Her throat was dry. My sisters? They're right next door, sleeping. They're doing well. Nia sat up slowly, wincing as her stiff muscles protested. I want to see them. You can in a bit. But first, you need to eat something. You haven't had real food in, well, a while. The nurse placed a tray down. Oatmeal, bananas, orange juice. Nia looked at it without moving. The nurse noticed. I'm not going to force you, honey, but I think your mom would want you to eat. At the word mom, something cracked inside Nia. She nodded slowly and picked up the spoon. Flashback. Back before the babies, before the hospital. Nia was 8 when the twins were born. Layla and Lena. 2 tiny pink bundles with sharp little cries and soft curls on their heads. Teresa brought them home wrapped in flower-patterned blankets, one in each arm, her eyes full of tired joy. They're a handful, she had laughed, handing Nia one of the babies. But you're my big girl now. Gonna help me raise 'em, aren't you? Nia had looked down at the baby in her arms, Layla, and nodded seriously. I'll protect them forever, her mama smiled. That's my warrior, and she did. Every day Nia helped. She fetched bottles, changed diapers, sang lullabies in a shaky little voice when Teresa's shifts ran long. But she never complained. Because she loved them, and because her mama made even the hard days feel light. Then came the sickness. At first it was nothing. Teresa got tired faster. She said it was just work. Then she started coughing. Then the coughing didn't stop. The diagnosis came like a thunderclap. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. Nia didn't understand all the words the doctor said, but she saw the look in her mama's eyes. It wasn't fear, it was worry. For her kids, not for herself. Teresa kept working as long as she could, but the smiles got weaker. The dancing stopped, the baking stopped, and the lavender candle, it stayed cold on the shelf. Baby, Teresa whispered one night from her hospital bed at home. Come here, Nia climbed up beside her, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. You're brave, Teresa whispered. So brave. I want you to promise me something, Nia blinked. Okay. Promise you'll take care of your sisters, no matter what, even when it's hard. I promise, her mother smiled faintly. Good girl. And one day, you'll meet someone who'll help you. Someone strong. The world's hard, but it has soft places too. You just have to look. Nia nodded, not really understanding. Then came Douglas. Teresa married him when Nia was 6. He was a big man, worked construction, had a voice like gravel, and eyes that didn't smile. But at first, he was quiet. Kind of distant, but not mean. After Teresa got sick, he changed. He stopped coming home on time. He smelled like beer. He got angry faster. He stopped helping with the twins. And one night, Nia heard him whispering on the phone in the kitchen. She ain't gonna make it, man. I didn't sign up for this. Teresa passed away 6 months later. The funeral was small. Just a few co-workers, an old neighbor, and Douglas, standing stiff, his jaw tight. Nia clutched her sisters the whole time. They didn't understand what was happening, but they felt the change in the air. Afterward at home, the house felt like a grave. No candles, no baking, no warmth, just cold silence. Douglas barely spoke. He left early, came back late. Sometimes he didn't come back at all. Nia cooked with whatever she could find. Fed the babies mashed bananas, changed them, held them when they cried. She was only 9. In the hospital, Nia stood by the window now, watching raindrops race down the glass. Her fingers pressed against the cool surface. She didn't cry. She hadn't cried in days. But inside, her heart felt like a sponge, soaked with too much water. Heavy, dripping. Behind her, the door creaked open. Shaq stood there, ducking slightly to fit through the frame. He wore a fresh black hoodie and sweatpants, his big frame calm, his face kind. Hey, he said softly. Got a minute? Nia turned. She nodded. Shaq sat down slowly in the chair across from her. Wanted to check in, make sure you're all right. I'm okay, she said quietly. He studied her for a moment. Her eyes looked older than 9. "You got a story," he said. "You don't have to tell it, but I'll listen whenever you're ready." She looked down at her hands. "My mom, she died." Shaq nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, Nia." "She was good. She smelled like nutmeg and lavender." His eyebrows rose slightly. "That's a beautiful thing to remember." "She was sick. Then she was gone. Then, Douglas." Her voice trailed off. Shaq leaned forward. "Who's Douglas?" She didn't answer. "Did he hurt you?" he asked softly. Nia's lower lip trembled. She nodded once. Shaq's eyes darkened. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "You did the right thing, getting out, protecting your sisters." Nia looked up at him, her eyes shining. "How did you see me?" "Sometimes," Shaq said, leaning back. "The world gets loud. But certain things? You feel them. Like a whisper under all the noise. That's what you were. A whisper I couldn't ignore." A silence passed between them. Not heavy. Just still. Then Nia whispered, "I don't want to go back." "You won't," he said, firm now. "Not on my watch." That night, as Nia finally fell asleep beside her sisters again, Shaq stood outside her door, arms crossed. He had known pain. He'd seen rough stories. But something about this girl hit him deep. That night, as Nia finally fell asleep beside her sisters again, Shaq stood outside her door, arms crossed. He had known pain. He'd seen rough stories. But something about this girl hit him deep. Maybe it was the quiet strength in her voice. Maybe it was the smell she remembered, nutmeg and lavender. A brave child's memory of love, holding on through a storm. The first time Nia saw her mother fall, it didn't feel like real life. They were in the kitchen. It was morning, a quiet one. Teresa Green was humming something soft and sweet as she poured cereal into 3 small bowls. The twins were giggling in their high chairs, Layla clapping her hands while Lena sucked on her thumb. Nia stood nearby with her homework folder in her hand. Suddenly, Teresa stopped humming. Her hand trembled. The milk carton slipped from her grip, crashed to the floor, and spilled in a cold white puddle. Nia looked up in time to see her mother stagger back, one hand clutching her stomach. Then, she dropped. Hard, like her legs had just given out. "Mama!" Nia cried. She ran to her, dropped to her knees. Teresa's eyes fluttered. Her lips were pale. Her skin was slick with sweat. "Mama? I'm okay, baby," Teresa whispered, breathless. "Just dizzy." She tried to smile. It didn't reach her eyes. That fall was the first sign. Then came the weight loss. The dark circles under her eyes. The endless naps. The days when Teresa, always so alive and warm, couldn't get out of bed. At the hospital, the words were big, complicated, wrapped in terms Nia couldn't understand. But when her mother came home and sat her down on the old tan couch, her eyes said it all. "Baby," she said gently, taking Nia's hands in hers. "I'm very sick." Nia didn't speak. "I have something called cancer in my stomach. The doctors are going to try and help me, but it's serious." Nia's heart started thudding. Her small fingers trembled. "Are you going to die?" Teresa looked at her, really looked. Her eyes were glassy. "I don't know," she whispered. And just like that, the world changed. That fall, the house felt quieter. Nia started taking on more, feeding the twins, changing them, rocking them when they cried. Teresa tried to stay strong, but some days she barely had the energy to smile. She started treatment. Chemotherapy. It made her hair fall out. Made her bones ache. She threw up in the mornings. Slept during the afternoons. Her arms bruised from needles. Her feet swelled. But she never let go of the little moments. She still kissed the twins' foreheads. Still squeezed Nia's hand every night before bed. Still whispered, You're my strong girl." Nia clung to those words like a rope in the dark. But someone else was slipping. Douglas. At first he was quiet, then cold. Then he just stopped trying. He came home smelling like beer more and more, ate meals without saying a word, stared at the wall instead of helping with the twins. One night, Nia heard him mutter in the kitchen, "This is a damn prison. I didn't sign up to play nursemaid." He thought she couldn't hear him, but she did. And from that moment on, something inside her changed. She didn't just take care of her sisters. She started watching over her mom, too. One morning, after a long night of Teresa vomiting in the bathroom, Nia helped her back to bed. Her mother's body felt fragile, like a bundle of sticks wrapped in a blanket. "Mama," Nia said softly, "maybe you shouldn't go to work no more." Teresa shook her head. "We need the money, baby." "I can help, I can—" "You already do," her mother said with a tired smile. "You're doing more than most grown folks ever will." Nia looked down. "I'm scared," she whispered. Teresa reached up, brushing a loose curl from Nia's cheek. Her fingers were cold. "I know," she said. "Me too." By winter, things were worse. Teresa had to stop working. Douglas stopped paying bills. The lights flickered some nights. The heat barely worked. The fridge was often empty. But still, Nia got up every morning, dressed the babies, and walked them in a second-hand stroller to the library. It was warm there. And it had books, story time, even snacks sometimes. The librarians, two older ladies named Miss Ruby and Miss Carla, started to notice. "You're here a lot, sweetheart," Miss Ruby said one afternoon. "Where's your mama today?" "She's resting," Nia said. Miss Carla handed her a sandwich. "You're a good big sister." Nia nodded, trying not to cry. At home, Douglas came back less and less. When he did come, he was angry. One night, Nia heard yelling in the bedroom. Teresa's voice, weak but firm. "You think this is hard for you? I'm the one dying." Then a loud thump, then silence. Nia ran to the room. Her mother sat on the edge of the bed, trembling, her eye red. Douglas stormed past Nia, muttering, "I'm going to the bar." It rained the day they buried her mother. A soft, steady drizzle, the kind that makes the air smell like wet earth and sorrow. Nia stood under a thin black umbrella, holding Layla on one hip, while Lena slept in the stroller. She wore her only black dress, too tight at the shoulders, too short at the knees. Her small shoes were soaked through. Cold water slipped between her toes. She didn't cry. She just stared at the casket as it was lowered into the ground. Her mother's name, Teresa Michelle Green, was carved into the wood like it was final. Like the woman who once sang lullabies and baked cinnamon bread, didn't live in the walls of that small apartment. Like she hadn't fought every single day to stay alive for her girls. Douglas stood a few feet away, stiff in a wrinkled black suit that smelled faintly of whiskey. His hands were buried deep in his coat pockets. He didn't look at Nia once. He didn't look at the casket either. Only the priest spoke. Soft words, hopeful words, but they floated past Nia like leaves in the rain. After the funeral, people trickled away. A few neighbors dropped off food, casseroles, fried chicken, store-bought cookies. Someone left a card with deepest condolences, written in looping gold letters. But by sunset, the apartment was quiet again. Nia stood in the doorway of the living room, holding a cold paper plate with macaroni on it. Douglas sat on the couch, a bottle in one hand, his tie loose around his neck. He didn't say a word. Nia cleared her throat. "The babies need diapers." He took a long drink. "We're out of milk, too." He didn't even blink. That night, Nia searched through the kitchen drawer and found 5 crumpled dollars. She wrapped the twins in their little coats and walked 4 blocks in the dark to the gas station. Her fingers were numb by the time she came back. Douglas was asleep on the couch. She fed the twins, changed them. rocked them to sleep, then crawled into her mother's bed. The pillow still smelled like lavender and mint, and for the first time since the hospital, Nia let herself cry. Quiet, sharp sobs into the blanket, like her heart was being wrung dry. The days that followed melted together like gray paint. Douglas stopped pretending. He stopped talking, stopped helping, stopped being anything but a shadow with heavy footsteps and sharp silence. He left in the morning, came home at night, drunk, tired, sometimes angry. One afternoon, Nia heard the front door slam. Heavy boots stomped down the hall. She quickly pulled the twins close and whispered, "Shh." Douglas stormed into the room. His eyes were bloodshot, his breath sharp with beer. "Where's the damn rent money?" he snapped. Nia stood in front of the crib. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "I haven't seen no checks." He grabbed the edge of the crib and shoved it hard, just enough to rattle it. The babies screamed. Nia screamed too. "Don't!" Douglas turned on her. "You think you're grown now? You think you run this house?" "I'm just trying to take care of them." He leaned in, face inches from hers. His jaw clenched, his voice low. "You're just a stupid little girl." Nia's hands shook, but she didn't back down. "I'm all they got." Douglas stared at her for a long second, then laughed, dark, bitter. He walked out and slammed the door behind him. That night, Nia locked the door to the bedroom. She pushed a chair up against it. Then she sat on the floor between the crib and her mother's bed, knees to her chest, rocking slightly as the twins slept. She remembered something her mother used to say whenever she was scared. "Strong girls don't wait for the light. They carry it." So that night, Nia made a decision. She would not cry anymore. She would not beg. She would not give up. She was going to survive. For her sisters, for her mother, for herself. The next week, Douglas brought home a woman. Nia was sitting on the couch with the babies when the front door burst open. Douglas stumbled in, laughing, with a woman in a tight red dress hanging off his arm. "This the kid," he mumbled. The woman looked Nia up and down, smirked. "Cute." Nia stood up slowly. "You can't bring strangers here." Douglas's smile vanished. He stepped forward, too close. His voice was low and slurred. "This is my house. You don't tell me what I can do." "You don't even pay the bills," Nia said quietly. Douglas's eyes went flat. Then, crack. His hand moved fast. The slap echoed through the room. Nia stumbled back, her cheek burning, her eyes wide. The twins started to cry. Douglas pointed a shaking finger at her. "Next time, I won't be so nice." He turned back to the woman and led her into the bedroom. Nia stood frozen. Then slowly, she picked up the babies and went to the kitchen. She didn't say a word. Just stood there, pressing a cold spoon to her cheek. That night, when the woman left and Douglas passed out on the couch, Nia crept into the kitchen. She opened the cabinet above the stove. There, taped under the top shelf, was the note her mother had told her about. A folded piece of yellow paper. She pulled it down with shaking hands and opened it. "Grayson Green, 2216 Faro Street, Savannah. If you find this, please take care of them. Grayson, her uncle, her mother's brother, her last chance." Nia pressed the note to her chest and began to plan. The next few days, she kept quiet. She saved what little money she could, took a few canned goods, found a ragged backpack in the hall closet. She packed extra diapers, a bottle of water, a photo of her mother, and the note. She waited for a night when the wind howled and Douglas drank more than usual. She waited until the babies were full and dry and warm in their onesies. Then, when the apartment fell into silence, she wrapped them in thick blankets, slipped on her old hoodie, and tiptoed through the hallway. The front door creaked, She froze. Douglas stirred but didn't wake. She opened the door and stepped out barefoot into the cold, wet night. The rain slapped against her skin. The sidewalk was icy under her feet. But she didn't stop. She didn't look back. As she walked down the block, babies in her arms, rain falling in sheets around her, Nia whispered a single promise into the dark. "I'm gonna find him, Mama. I'm gonna find Grayson." The air in the apartment grew heavy, the kind of heavy that made it hard to breathe, even in silence. Days turned into a pattern. Douglas sleeping till noon, disappearing till dark, returning drunk and angrier than before. The laughter that once filled the walls, the baby's soft coos, Nia's humming lullabies, faded, replaced with tiptoes, with holding your breath, with waiting. One Friday, Douglas slammed the door harder than usual. Nia was feeding the twins mashed bananas, wiping their little chins with the hem of her t-shirt. She glanced toward the hallway. Her hands stiffened. He came in with red in his eyes. Red from drinking. Red from something else, too. He tossed his jacket on the floor, stared at her. "You cleaned this place today?" Nia swallowed. "I cleaned this morning." His nostrils flared. "Don't talk back. I wasn't—" He walked fast. Too fast. Nia barely had time to move before his hands swept the bowl of bananas off the table. It splattered on the wall. Layla started crying. Lena followed. "Clean that now," he barked. She crouched, picking up broken glass with bare hands. Blood dotted her palm. Douglas didn't notice, or didn't care. He stormed off to his room and slammed the door. Nia sat back on her heels, hands shaking. Her jaw clenched. She took a deep breath, then gathered the twins. "Shh," she whispered, kissing their foreheads. "It's okay. It's okay." But it wasn't, and deep down, she knew it wouldn't ever be again. That night, she waited until the snores came, ragged, deep. Douglas passed out like a dropped stone. Nia sat beside the crib with a notebook in her lap and a flashlight wrapped in an old scarf. She flipped to the back page. There, in her neatest handwriting, Grayson Green, 2216 Faro Street, Savannah. She stared at it for a long time. She didn't know how to get there, didn't even know what Grayson looked like, but the name felt warm, safe, like a hand reaching through the dark. The next day, the real break came. Douglas left early, slamming the door so hard a picture frame fell from the wall. The babies were both fussy. Lena had a fever. Layla was teething. Nia hadn't slept in 2 nights. By evening, she curled up on the couch with both girls in her arms. The house quiet, just the hum of the fridge. Then the door opened. Nia tensed. Her head turned slowly. Douglas walked in. But something was different. He wasn't alone. There were 2 men behind him, both scruffy, loud, laughing like they were in a bar, not a home. "What are you doing?" Nia asked, her voice soft but sharp. Douglas waved a hand. "Relax. They just need a place to crash." "This is not a place to crash." One of the men whistled. "She's got a mouth, huh?" Nia stood, holding both babies tight. "They can't stay here." Douglas stepped forward. The smile on his face melted away like wax. "You don't tell me what I can do in my house," he growled. "This is my mother's house," Nia snapped. That was the mistake. Before she could blink, Douglas lunged. He grabbed her wrist so hard she screamed. "You think you're tough now?" His breath was hot, wild, his grip like iron. Lena cried out, squirming in her arms. Layla whimpered. "Let me go," Nia said through gritted teeth. He didn't. Not until one of the men muttered, "Dude, chill. She's just a kid." Douglas released her with a shove. Nia stumbled back, bumping into the table. The babies wailed. Douglas stared at her for a long second, chest rising and falling. Then he turned and walked into his room, slamming the door. The others stayed in the living room, drinking and watching TV like nothing had happened. Nia ran into her room, locked the door, and cried soundlessly into a pillow. The skin on her wrist was already turning purple. That night, she knew. It was time. Not soon. Not eventually. Now, by the next evening, the plan was set in her head. She packed a bag. 1 bottle, 2 pacifiers, 4 diapers. The last of the formula. 1 photo of her mother, her arms wrapped around all the 3 girls. And the note. The note she now read every night. Grayson Green, 2216 Faro Street, Savannah. She didn't know how far Savannah was. But she would walk. She would crawl if she had to. That night, she didn't sleep. She listened. To the TV in the living room, to the fridge hum, to the rain beginning to tap at the windows. Douglas didn't come home. His friends left around midnight. At 2:17 a.m., the house was finally silent. Nia wrapped the twins in the thickest blankets she could find. She wore her hoodie pulled tight. No shoes. She didn't want the sound to wake anyone. She opened the window in the hallway, unlatched the screen, hoisted the diaper bag over one shoulder, carried both babies, one in her arms, one strapped to her back. She whispered to them, lips trembling, "We're going somewhere better." "I promise." Then she climbed out into the rain. The wind hit her first, sharp, cold like needles. The sidewalk soaked her feet in seconds. But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Streetlight after streetlight passed. Empty cars, flickering signs. A cat darted across the road. Her hands were going numb, but she just tightened her grip on Lena. Every block felt like a mile. She asked one woman outside a 24-hour laundromat, "Do you know where Faro Street is?" The woman frowned. "Ain't no Faro around here." "You lost, baby." Nia just nodded and walked away. At one point, she sat on a cold bench outside a gas station and cried quietly, rocking Layla, who had started to cough. But she didn't go back. Couldn't go back. She walked until her feet were raw, until her arms burned, until the sky began to lighten slightly, still raining but softer. Then she saw it. A park, not much, just a few benches, a broken swing set, and a rotting shelter with a roof. She crawled under the shelter and sat in the corner, curled up with both girls in her lap, closed her eyes, and whispered the name like a prayer. "Grayson, Grayson, Grayson." The rain hadn't stopped. It had only gotten heavier, colder, like the sky was trying to press her down. Nia sat on the wet concrete floor of the shelter, arms wrapped around Lena and Layla. The diaper bag lay at her side, soaked through. Its zipper rusted and stuck. Her fingers were numb. Her hoodie was dripping, and her lips had turned the faintest blue. Still, she didn't sleep, not even for a minute. She couldn't. Each passing car made her flinch. She didn't know if Douglas had noticed yet, if he'd woken up and found the window open, if he was angry, looking for her, if he'd called the police, maybe lied to them, said she was unstable, kidnapped the twins. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was moving forward. She rocked the babies gently. Layla was finally asleep, her cheek warm against Nia's chest. Lena stared up at her, glassy-eyed, her little breaths shallow. "You're okay," Nia whispered, her voice shaking. "You're okay, baby girl." She checked the bottle. Empty. She hadn't found water in hours. Her stomach growled painfully. But hunger didn't scare her. What scared her was how quiet the twins were now, how weak. She thought of her mother. Her real mother. Not the pale, bald version in the hospital, but the one with warm brown skin and strong arms. The one who used to hum old Sam Cooke songs while folding laundry, who always smelled like lavender and nutmeg. That version of her mother always knew what to do. Nia stared at the road beyond the shelter. The street was empty. Not even a bus in sight. Just puddles and fog and a broken street lamp flickering like a heartbeat. Then came headlights. A car slowed at the corner. A big, black SUV. It stopped. Her breath caught. The engine stayed on. She couldn't see the driver through the tinted windows. Every muscle in her body tensed. Please not him, she thought. The door opened. A tall man stepped out, ducking his head against the rain. He was massive, like really massive. Tall as a tree, broad shoulders under a soaked gray hoodie, baggy jeans, bald head. For a second, she froze, heart pounding in her ears. Then his face came into view. Kind eyes, a thick, trimmed beard, a worried frown. He didn't say anything at first, just stared. Then softly, carefully, he said, "Hey there." His voice was deep, gentle. Nia clutched the twins tighter, backed up into the corner of the shelter. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said, both palms up. "I promise." She said nothing, just shook her head, barely able to breathe. He took a step closer, slowly. "You got babies with you?" he asked, eyebrows pinching. Nia nodded, too tired to lie. "You alone out here?" Another nod. The man looked around, confused and concerned. The rain kept pouring, soaking his hoodie. "I'm Shaquille," he said. "You can call me Shaq." Her eyes widened a little. She'd heard that name, she thought, somewhere. The man knelt down in front of her but didn't come close. His voice stayed soft. "You need help, sweetheart." She looked down at Lena's face, pale, lips dry, then up again. Her lips trembled. I think my sister's sick." Shaq's expression changed. Fast. He moved in, gently, with care. "Can I see her?" Nia hesitated, then pulled back the blanket from Lena's face. Shaq's jaw tightened. He reached out, careful not to touch. "She needs a doctor," he said. "Right now." Nia blinked tears away. "I can't go to a hospital. I don't have ID or nothing." "I got you," he said. "I'll take care of everything." Still, she hesitated. "I ain't gonna call nobody. Not police. Not child services. Just a doctor, all right?" Her voice came out small. "Why?" He tilted his head. "Why what? Why would you help me?" Shaq looked at her for a long moment. Then he took off his hoodie and stepped forward, wrapping it around her and the babies like a blanket. "Because you're out here in the rain, barefoot, holding two babies. And no kid should ever be alone like that." Nia started crying, not loud, just soft, shaking sobs. Shaq didn't say anything, just crouched beside her and waited. 15 minutes later, they were in the SUV. The heater was blasting. Nia sat in the passenger seat with both twins on her lap, wrapped in thick towels Shaq had in the back. He drove fast, but not recklessly. Nia looked at him sideways, her fingers still trembling. "You really Shaquille O'Neal?" He glanced at her, smiled a little. "Yeah." "You played basketball?" "Used to." "You're famous," he shrugged. "Sometimes. Not today, though. Today, I'm just the guy who saw you in the rain." She stared out the window, blinking hard. "I didn't know where else to go," she said. "You don't have to explain anything." But she wanted to, needed to. "I was trying to get to Savannah," she whispered. "Someone named Grayson. He's supposed to be my uncle. Mama wrote him a letter before she passed." Shaq nodded slowly, taking it in. "You got the letter." She pulled it out of her hoodie pocket, wet, wrinkled. He glanced at it during a red light, then nodded. "We'll find him," he said. Her mouth trembled. "You don't even know me." Shaq looked at her with something like pain in his eyes. "No, but I know your kind of pain. And I know you didn't run unless you had a damn good reason." She lowered her eyes. "Thank you," she said. Shaq just nodded. "Hold on, little mama, we're almost there." At the emergency room, things moved fast. Shaq carried Lena in his arms, Nia holding Layla. The nurses took one look and rushed them inside. The next hour was a blur. Doctors, warm blankets, IVs, oxygen tubes. A nurse brought Nia a cup of warm soup and dry socks. Shaq never left the hallway. Sat there like a statue, silent, waiting. Finally, a nurse came out. She's stable now, dehydrated, but nothing we can't fix. Nia almost collapsed. Shaq stood up fast, steadying her. You okay? She nodded, covering her mouth, tears leaking down. I've been so scared. He didn't say anything, just sat beside her and let her cry. An hour later, a social worker showed up. Shaq stepped in front of her before she could speak. She's with me, he said firmly. I'm going to help her through this. The woman blinked. Mr. O'Neill. Okay, of course. They talked quietly while Nia dozed in the waiting room chair, her arms wrapped protectively around Layla. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The sky was starting to clear, slowly. Shaq stepped out to make a few calls. First to a pediatrician he trusted, then to someone who could help find Grayson Green. He stared up at the clouds, the early light painting the sky in faint orange. Then he exhaled, long and slow. I got you, kid, he whispered. The city looked different in the morning, not better, just different. The sky was dull gray. The sidewalk shined wet under the pale light. People moved fast, heads down, coats tight against the wind. Nobody made eye contact. Nobody noticed the tired girl in the corner of the waiting room, still curled up with one of her sisters in her lap. Nia opened her eyes slowly. Her arms ached. Her mouth was dry. But she didn't move. Not until she remembered where she was. The hospital, the nurse, the warm blanket, and Shaquille O'Neal. She sat up quickly, eyes darting. Layla stirred and whined softly. Nia looked around. Shaq's hoodie still lay over her legs. But he wasn't there. Her heart skipped. Then a nurse appeared. You're awake, the woman said kindly. She had warm brown eyes and salt and pepper braids. Where's Shaq? Nia asked, blinking hard. He's right outside, honey, the nurse said. He's been here all night. Brought you food. You didn't even wake up when we gave you the sandwich. Nia looked down. A half-eaten crust of bread sat in her lap. She didn't even remember eating it. Your sister's doing better, the nurse added. She's resting. Nia exhaled slowly. Can I see her? Soon, baby. Let's get you cleaned up first. Come on, we got a fresh shower room. And there's a clean shirt and pants Mr. O'Neill brought you. Nia hesitated. The nurse tilted her head. You're safe here. That one sentence. She didn't realize how much she needed it. She nodded, slowly rising to her feet. 15 minutes later, Nia stepped into the hospital hallway. Towel-dried hair pulled back into a ponytail, wearing a soft gray long-sleeve shirt and jogger pants that were a little too big, but clean. Shaq stood leaning against the wall near the vending machines, sipping a coffee. He looked up and smiled. There she is. Nia gave him a shy look. Hey. You sleep okay? She shrugged. Better than usual. He nodded, his expression gentle. She's gonna be all right, he said. Lena, doctor said she just needed rest, food, and water. You got her here just in time. Nia looked down at the floor. Her voice came out small. Thank you. Shaq walked over slowly and handed her a paper bag. Couple of muffins in there. Banana nut. You eat yet? Nia shook her head. He stepped back, giving her space. Eat, then we'll talk. An hour later, they sat outside on a bench in the hospital garden. Birds chirped quietly from the bushes. The sky was still cloudy but brighter now. Shaq leaned forward, elbows on knees. Nia sat beside him, holding a styrofoam cup of apple juice. Social worker's gonna come talk to us later, he said gently. But don't worry, I already told her the truth. You're trying to do right by your sisters. Nia stiffened. They gonna take them? He shook his head. Not if we got anything to say about it. Her voice cracked. Douglas. He'll say I stole them. Shaq's jaw tightened. Man like that doesn't get to call himself a father, he said. He left you all to suffer. Nia blinked back tears. I tried to hold it together, she said. I did everything I could, but when he started hitting the wall near Layla's crib, her lips trembled. I thought, if I wait any longer, I won't get the chance again. Shaq's face was stone, his hands clasped tight. You did the right thing, he said. Don't ever doubt that. Later that afternoon, the social worker, Ms. Denise, returned. She was kind but firm, a woman in her 40s with a pressed blazer and silver hoops. We have to place you all temporarily, she said carefully, sitting across from Nia in the hospital office. Just until we can sort everything out. No, Nia whispered, her eyes wide. Please don't split us. Shaq stepped in then. I'll take care of them for now, he said. Ms. Denise blinked. Mr. O'Neill, are you offering temporary guardianship? Yep, she hesitated. It's highly unusual. Shaq leaned forward. You want to tell a judge you denied 3 kids care from a man with 5 security clearances, a home with cameras, and a private pediatrician. Ms. Denise blinked. Well, no. Then let me help. Nia stared at him. Why are you doing this? She whispered. He turned to her, something warm in his eyes. Because sometimes the world's cold, and somebody's got to be the warmth. That night, they left the hospital in a different car. One of Shaq's drivers had brought it. Nia sat in the back with both twins, now wearing matching fleece onesies the nurses had given them. They were quiet, but better. Lena even smiled at her with sleepy eyes. Shaq sat in the front, talking softly to his assistant on the phone. Yeah, I need the guest wing ready. Crib. Changing table formula. The works Nia listened, stunned. He wasn't joking. He was really taking them in. She looked down at her sisters, her arms curled around them, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself hope. But hope doesn't mean ease. The city was still cold. Even as the SUV rolled past glittering buildings and streetlights, Nia felt that invisible pressure. At a stoplight, she saw a woman on the sidewalk staring at the car, then narrowing her eyes when she noticed her. Just a black girl in the back seat of a luxury car, holding 2 babies. The woman mouthed something. Where's their mother? Nia turned away. She didn't owe anyone anything. The next morning, Nia woke up in a soft bed, with high thread count sheets. She was in a room bigger than her whole apartment. White curtains, bookshelves, a rocking chair. Shaq had given her the guest suite next to the nursery. There were diapers, warm bottles, soft toys, a baby monitor, even a nightlight shaped like a little star. She barely moved at first, just stared at the ceiling, trying to believe it was real. But reality returned. A knock at the door. Shaq peeked in. Morning, little mama. You good? Nia nodded slowly. I think so, he smiled. Come eat, we got pancakes. In the kitchen, it was warm. Shaq stood at the stove, flipping pancakes like a pro. You know how to cook? She asked, genuinely surprised. Gotta feed myself somehow, he chuckled. Nia sat at the counter watching him. She finally spoke. You think they'll let me stay with my sisters? Shaq set a plate in front of her and looked her in the eyes. I think we're gonna fight like hell to make sure of it. She nodded, biting her lip. And Grayson? Shaq leaned back. My team's on it. We'll find him. Nia looked down at her lap. I don't want to get my hopes up. Let me do that part, he said. Let me hope for all 3 of you until you can. It was close to midnight when the event finally ended. Shaquille O'Neal stepped out of the downtown ballroom, buttoning his coat against the cold drizzle. The charity gala had been beautiful. Elegant people, good music, heartfelt speeches. But now, With the rain soaking the sidewalks and the streets mostly empty, it felt like another world. His driver offered him an umbrella, but Shaq waved it off. "I'm good. Just need air." He climbed into the back seat of his black SUV, his long frame folding in with practiced ease. "Take the scenic way home," he told the driver. "I need to think." The car pulled off silently into the quiet night. Shaq leaned back in the leather seat, watching the city roll by. He thought about the kids at the event, those sick kids who still smiled like the world hadn't taken anything from them. He thought about his mother Lucille always saying, "Baby, if you got extra, you give extra. That's the rule." His phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. "You've got a 9 a.m. taping tomorrow. Studio's asking if you'll be on time." He stared at it, then turned the phone off. He needed silence. The kind you only find when you're moving slow, when the city's asleep, and the world stops looking so shiny. They passed a closed gas station, then a row of apartment buildings with metal bars over the windows. The rain got heavier. Shaq sighed, reaching for the radio. But then something pulled at him. Just a feeling. He leaned forward. "Slow down." The driver tapped the brakes. Shaq peered through the rain-blurred window. There, just beyond a rusted bus bench, near the corner of a shuttered corner store, stood a small figure. He squinted. It was a girl, young, maybe 10, maybe 11. She stood barefoot in the rain, holding two small bundles wrapped in a jacket. One bundle squirmed weakly. Shaq's chest tightened. He'd seen desperation before. Plenty of it. But something about the way she stood, still, silent, like the world had frozen, hit different. "Stop the car," he said. The driver looked back. "Sir?" "Now." The SUV rolled to a stop at the curb. Shaq opened the door and stepped out into the rain. The cold hit him instantly, but he didn't care. He walked slowly, carefully, toward the girl. "Hey," he called softly. "You okay?" She didn't move. She just stared at the sidewalk, holding those bundles tighter. As he got closer, he could see her more clearly. Soaked shirt clinging to her thin frame. Bare feet red from the cold. Hair matted from the rain. The babies, he saw now, were real. Tiny faces peeked out from the coat. One whimpered. Shaq slowed down, palms open. "It's all right. I'm not gonna hurt you." Still nothing. He knelt down about 5 feet away, careful not to startle her. "My name's Shaquille," he said gently. "You might have seen me on TV, but I'm just a regular guy right now. And I want to help." She looked up then, just a flicker. Her eyes were wide, bloodshot, lips trembling. One of the babies coughed weakly. Shaq's voice cracked a little. "They sick?" She nodded once, barely. "You got somewhere to go?" Silence. He looked at her again, really looked. This wasn't a runaway. This was something deeper. "Please," he said, his voice low, "let me get y'all warm. Safe. That's all I want." She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her knees buckled slightly. Shaq moved fast, catching her before she hit the ground. One arm around her back, the other cradling the babies against her chest. She was light. Too light. "Got ya," he murmured. She didn't fight. She just collapsed into him, like she'd been holding herself up for days. Back at the SUV, the driver's eyes went wide. "She okay?" "She will be," Shaq said. He got in, still holding all three. "Hospital, fast." The driver didn't question it. Inside the car, Shaq wrapped them in his coat, rubbing the baby girls' backs gently to keep them awake. The older girl, Nia, he'd learn later, opened her eyes briefly. Her lips moved. He leaned close. "What's your name?" he asked. "Nia," she whispered. Then she was out. Shaq pressed a button on his phone. "Denise, sorry to wake you. I got a situation. I need you at Children's Hospital now." Denise Marshall, his long-time contact in Child Protective Services, didn't even ask questions. "I'm on my way." At the hospital, nurses rushed over with stretchers. Shaq stepped back, letting the professionals work. But he didn't leave. He sat in the waiting room for hours. Every time a nurse walked by, he looked up. Every time he whispered a prayer. "Let them be okay. Please, let them be okay." Around 4 a.m., a nurse finally walked over with a tired smile. "They're stable, all three." Shaq let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "She asked about you," the nurse added. "The older girl. When she woke up." He nodded, stood up. "Good," he said quietly. "I'll be here when she's ready." Later, as he sat with a coffee cup going cold in his hands, Denise arrived. She was short and sharp-eyed, wearing jeans and a sweater. "You pick up stray angels now?" she said, dropping into the seat beside him. Shaq looked over. "Felt like the universe tapped me on the shoulder." "She tell you what happened?" He shook his head. "Not yet," Denise exhaled. "Well, if she does, I'll do everything I can." Shaq nodded slowly. "Don't let the system eat them." Denise touched his arm. "Not on my watch." Back in the hospital hallway, Shaq looked through the glass at the room where Nia slept, her arm curled protectively around the smallest twin. Rain still tapped the window. But inside, there was warmth now. The twins were sleeping. Nia sat in a padded armchair in a quiet corner of the hospital's children's ward, a soft blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She stared at the steam rising from a paper cup of warm apple juice. It smelled like comfort, but her hands still trembled. She was clean now, dressed in fresh clothes, soft gray sweatpants and a long hoodie, donated by a nurse. Her hair had been gently brushed and tied back with a pink band. But her eyes, they held the weight of too many nights alone. Shaquille O'Neal stood just outside the glass, arms crossed, watching her silently. His large frame seemed to fill the hallway, but his expression was quiet, thoughtful. A social worker named Teresa sat beside him. "She's not saying much," Teresa said. "But what she has said, it matches up with what the nurse and the report show. She's been through something bad. We need to find family, anyone she might trust." Shaq nodded. He rubbed his jaw. "She mentioned a name. Grayson. Said her mom wrote to him before she died." "Did she say who he was?" "Numbered just that her mom trusted him." Teresa opened her notepad. "I can start digging." Shaq handed her the letter Nia had been clinging to like a lifeline. The ink had run a little in the rain, but the words were still readable. "Grayson, if anything happens to me, please come for them. They're yours too." An address sat beneath the words. West Palm Beach, Florida. Shaq's jaw clenched. "Find him," he said. 2 days later, Grayson was found. He was living in a small rental home near the edge of town, working part-time as a landscaper. He was in his late 30s, dark-skinned with close-cut curls and tired eyes. When Teresa showed up with the letter in hand, he stood frozen on his porch. She kept that," he whispered. "We believe she wanted you to care for her kids." Grayson sat down on the porch steps, like someone had cut the strings, holding him up. "I begged her not to marry that man. Douglas. I knew he wasn't right. We fought. I left. I never saw her again." He stared at the letter, his fingers trembling. "They're still alive?" he asked softly. "They're waiting." The reunion wasn't sudden. The system had to do what the system does. Paperwork, interviews, clearances. But Shaq used his weight, quietly, firmly, to keep things moving. And then, one warm Friday morning, Nia stepped through the hospital lobby, holding her sister's hands, and Grayson stood there, waiting. He dropped to one knee. Nia stared at him. "You're Grayson?" she asked, her voice small. He nodded, eyes filling. "I was your mom's brother. I'm... I'm your uncle." The twins clung to Nia's legs. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just walked to him, slowly. And then, all at once, she threw her arms around his neck and held on. Grayson sobbed into her shoulder. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have been there." Nia didn't say anything. She just closed her eyes. She was tired of being strong. Maybe now, she wouldn't have to be. Shaq stayed in the background. He watched them leave the hospital together. Grayson carrying one twin in each arm, Nia walking beside them. But he wasn't done. He didn't want Nia and the girls going to some shabby apartment with peeling walls and nothing but folding chairs. They'd already known too much of that. So he made a call. Actually, a lot of them. He found a modest house on a quiet street, near a good school. He paid for the first year's rent and gave Grayson a new work truck and tools. No more mowing lawns with rusty gear. He filled the kitchen with food, the nursery with toys, the closets with shoes, real shoes. No one in that house would ever walk barefoot again unless they wanted to. Nia didn't trust it at first. The first night in the new house, she didn't sleep in her bed. She lay on the floor beside the crib, one hand on the mattress to make sure the twins were still breathing. She kept waking up in the middle of the night, heart racing, listening for footsteps, for yelling. But none came, just the soft hum of the ceiling fan. The next night, she made it halfway to her bed before curling up on the rug. By the end of the week, she was sleeping under the blankets. Shaq visited quietly, never making a big deal of it. He didn't come with cameras or press, just groceries, and sometimes a basketball. Grayson and Shaq would shoot hoops in the driveway, while the girls watched from the porch, giggling. One day, Nia came out and asked if she could try. Shaq handed her the ball with a warm smile. "Think you can take me?" Nia narrowed her eyes, lips twitching into the ghost of a smile. "You're old," Shaq laughed. "All right, little lady, let's see what you got." She dribbled clumsily, took a shot, and it bounced off the rim. "Airball," he teased. She stuck out her tongue. He reached down, gently adjusted her stance. "Try again. Slow it down. Line it up." This time, the ball arced high and kissed the backboard before falling through the net. Nia's eyes went wide, her face lit up. "I did it!" "You sure did." The internet found out, of course. Someone snapped a blurry photo of Shaq walking into the hospital, holding two babies, with a soaked little girl leaning into his shoulder. The photo went viral in hours. The caption read, "Shaquille O'Neal rescues barefoot girl and twins from a storm, brings them to safety." News outlets called him a hero. He refused every interview. "I just did what any decent human should," he told one reporter before shutting the door. He didn't want applause. He just wanted them safe. Months passed. The seasons changed. Nia got new glasses. She started school again halfway through the semester. The first few weeks were hard. Kids stared. Teachers whispered. But then one morning, she volunteered to read aloud in class. Her voice shook at first, but then grew strong. Her teacher cried quietly behind her glasses. The twins, Ava and Amari, began to crawl, then walk. They laughed easily, like they'd never known fear. They called Grayson Unca and followed Nia everywhere like ducklings. There were tantrums and nightmares, yes, but also giggles and bedtime stories. Healing isn't loud. It's slow, it's quiet, like rain stopping after a long storm. Then came the invitation. Nia had written a speech. Her school was hosting a kindness assembly, and she'd been chosen to read. Grayson helped her practice every night. She stood in the living room, hands shaking, reading off index cards. Shaq visited that night too. He sat cross-legged on the floor, arms crossed, watching with a serious face. When she finished, he clapped once. "That's strong, Nia. Real strong." She blushed. "Too long?" He shook his head. "Not at all." He looked at her, eyes kind. You ready to share it with the world? She nodded. I think so. The auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, students, all buzzing with noise. Then the lights dimmed and Nia walked slowly onto the stage. She wore a simple dress. Her hair was braided. Her shoes were red. She looked out at the crowd and saw him. Shaq, sitting in the third row, big as ever, quiet, smiling. She took a deep breath, then began. My name is Nia, and I used to think kindness was something small, like someone opening a door for you, or saying bless you when you sneeze. But then something happened to me and my sisters. Something really bad. We lost our mom, we lost our home, we walked in the rain with nothing, and we thought the world had forgotten us. She paused. Her eyes swept the room. And then someone stopped. Not because he had to, not because anyone told him to, but because he saw us. He saw that we were cold, tired, scared, and he said, let me help. That's kindness too. But it's big, it's brave, and it saves people. She swallowed hard. She looked straight at Shaq. Shaquille O'Neal saved us in the rain. But he also brought back the sun. The room fell silent. Then applause exploded around her. People stood. Grayson cried into his hands. Shaq stayed seated, his eyes wet, nodding slowly, like he was proud, but didn't want to show it too loud. Nia smiled for the first time in months. A real smile. And she didn't feel broken anymore. Final scene. Later that evening, they gathered on the porch as the sun set. Grayson grilled hot dogs. The twins chased bubbles in the yard. Nia sat beside Shaq on the steps, holding a plastic cup of lemonade. She looked up at him. You changed our lives, she said. He looked at her, one eyebrow raised. No, he said gently. You saved your sisters. You walked through the storm. I just showed up when the world needed me to. She leaned against him. I think you were the sun. He chuckled softly. I think you are. Guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. Let us know about your thoughts in the comment section. Also, subscribe the channel for daily stories notification.